Welcome to the Market Mindset. We are the hub for news, results, and CEO interviews focusing the junior commodities sector. We provide market analysis and perspective that will help position you for solid returns. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can help support us by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and clicking the notification bell. For more info, you can visit our website. All links are in the description below. Now let's get into today's video.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Market Mindset and Digging Deeper. Thanks to Red Cloud for providing two great guests today. A week before PDAC, so we're getting you at a very busy time, but we're really glad to have you. We've got Cory Belyk here, who's the Executive VP and CEO over CanAlaska Uranium. This is a very unique story because it's end-to-end user kind of story of the whole chain of this new shift in power. I won't give that away just yet. Just want to give that as a bit of a teaser. But how are you doing today, Cory? It's great to have you here.
Oh, I'm doing great, Andrew. You know, it's a beautiful time of the year now in June, and the markets are what they are. But boy, we're having fun. We're getting ready for PDAC. It's been a few years since PDAC's been live, and we're hearing some great things coming next week. So we're real happy to be going and getting at it and telling the story of CanAlaska.
And like you said, we've got a tough market right now, but that being said, the one thing that's great about the whole mining sector is they're very durable people. You're used to tough markets, but you're sitting in the driver's seat in a very firm place in this shift. That if what people really want to see is this green shift, and if all the politicians and everyone else and the COP26, if that crowd wants to hit anything imaginable, then you guys are sitting in a very strong position. And I'll let you kind of tell that macro story a bit, maybe.
Yeah, you know, if the world has that dream state of clean energy production and use, you know, CanAlaska's portfolio is really second to none. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's that front to back end, and our portfolio spans principally in uranium in the Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan. So that's that clean energy production, that base load power that the world craves, cheap energy, which it needs in order to really flourish and do everything that we want to do in that dream state. But then you got to move that clean energy through to the end user, and that takes copper, and a lot more copper is going to be required. We've got some pretty good copper assets in our portfolio, but importantly, we've developed this incredible sulfide nickel story in the Thompson Nickel Belt, the fifth largest sulfide nickel belt in Manitoba, the neighboring province to Saskatchewan, that really is up against Vale in terms of its size. And that's the critical point where you take that energy and you store it and deliver it to the end user, whether it's electric vehicles for your homes, wherever it might be. Batteries primarily consist of nickel these days, and we need more of that clean sulfide nickel.
This is great because that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Is sometimes you have analysts that get annoyed and they go, wait a second, are you a uranium company? Are you a nickel company? Are you a copper company? And they tend to like just one thing off and just tell me you're that story. I can get that down to the end line. But it's important for people, two things. One, you're a project generator. So maybe for generalists out there that are watching, they'll go, what is that? And two, you've kind of explained this end-to-end use of being that whole kind of new chain that we need in order to develop energy in the way that we need to have it developed.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. We are a project generator, but we deploy a hybrid model. We project generate a lot of projects, whether it's uranium, copper, nickel in this case. But we also explore the key projects where we see we can build a lot of value through discovery for our shareholders, because a lot of the value created for our shareholders is on that discovery, say the first few years from those first intersections. And that's what we're targeting, especially in the uranium space. But no one wanted to talk about uranium for about 10 years post-Fukushima. So what do we do for our shareholders to try and create value? Well, we went, wow, you know, this dream state of the world wants more nickel, more copper, but really nickel. And one of the largely ignored sulfide nickel belts on the planet sit in Manitoba. And that's what we did. We went out and staked while nobody was looking at nickel. And here we are. We've got this incredible portfolio that, you know, spans front end to back end in that green space. And, you know, we got 300,000 plus hectares in the Athabasca Basin, principally in the east, where you have all that infrastructure of Cameco and Orano. That's the production center for, you know, 20% of the world's uranium is right there in Saskatchewan. And then we've got this incredible geology in Manitoba with all this sulfide nickel, again, largely untouched with current methods or new methods to look for these things. And again, we've got the second largest portfolio in the nickel space against Vale and Manitoba, and it's an incredible story. And we're looking to find ways to monetize that nickel for our shareholders right now and get back to uranium.
Okay, so this is great. Let's maybe take a chunk out of the uranium first, and then we'll move into the second part. I mean, we don't need to say too much about the where you are. I mean, the Athabasca Basin infrastructure. I mean, it wouldn't take anyone any effort to realize that's the spot to be. Really, you're in a great location. Everything's up there. But it's specifically because you had a discovery. Had 3 new discoveries in 2021 in that region. What would you say makes you stand out, and also what should someone be really excited about if they're looking at you today and going, "Hey, listen, I need to kind of look at my portfolio and get on board with this new shift in energy"?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, it starts with land. You've got to have land, and we've got that, and you've already articulated that. Then you've got to have the people. We've been building the team back up in the last 12 months through our networks and people that we know, and I've managed to pull in some really key individuals out of Cameco and Orano, to the 2 big producers in the basin. These guys have been parts of discoveries in the Athabasca. They know what they're looking for. Our senior geoscientist found Cigar Lake, Dr. Carl Schiemann, so he's still on the board and part of the team. So we've done a lot of building of the team here through that experience, but also bringing in some very talented young geoscientists. So we're working on that still. We're up to about 12 people now, but we're getting ready to execute. You need access to the capital, and we're well financed with still $13 million in the bank. We're ready to go for this year in 2022, and we're a well-structured company. For a company that's been doing this in the uranium space for 15 years now, we only have 101 million shares outstanding, 143 million fully diluted. Management owns anywhere from 5 to 8%, depends where you sit in there. So we're along for the ride with the shareholders. We're well structured, well financed, and we are ready to go. And to top it all off, 2021 was brilliant for us. We had 3 new areas of mineralization on 3 separate projects, one on a joint venture with Denison, one on a joint venture with Cameco, and one that we own 100%. So our portfolio is responding to our exploration effort. And that's key because we've got 3 projects responding to that push that we're doing now in uranium. And that's a great story. And it might be very unique amongst our peers. So pay attention to 2022. It looks pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, having those partners too, and for anyone who's watching who's more of a generalist, those are serious partners to have. It's always a big plus to have, not only to attract the management, because they have to leave big companies to be excited about a more junior venture, an exploration venture. That's always a good telling sign, because if you're going to attract the management and people to come on board, that's a big step. And you can rely on their technical expertise. And on that, I see you've got Ambassador Thomas Graham as well, which is interesting too. So U.S. Ambassador, that adds a very interesting mix for our partners down south.
Yeah, Ambassador Graham, he's well connected in nuclear space down in the U.S. He was part of 4 or 5 successive presidencies and all those arms negotiations with the Russians and the U.S. To bring in that depleted uranium. He was part of all that. And he's a big promoter of the business for us, the nuclear business in the U.S. And we're well connected through the U.S. market, where a lot of the Canadian uranium goes into utilities. So yeah, it's he's a firm believer in what we do. He's been with us for quite some time. There's a lot of trust in what's coming in the market. And that is the tidal wave that we're going to need more uranium, and CanAlaska's position to go out and find it. So he's a big believer in what we do and a big supporter. Yeah, absolutely. And
it helps too that you've got traditionally Democrats have been very opposed to uranium or nuclear, but Biden's certainly more than open to it. And that's a very interesting shift that we've seen in the last year or so. So there's lots of potential optimism there, to say the least. I think because, like we talked before, there's a reality check. We have to come to truth and come to terms with the shift that's happening. And I'd kind of alluded to earlier, the timing is very strange of what's happening, but maybe it is the best time now. We've got people coming out of the pandemic to go, if we're going to make this push, let's just do it now. Let's not get back to normal. Everyone just settle back into life. Is that let's do it. Let's make these changes now. Let's push.
Well, I think we're not seeing the normal being returned here because there's the dynamics of of the green energy push, but now you've compounded it with geopolitical issues. And you're starting to see countries like the UK, they're committing to 8 new reactor builds. You've got Korea committing again to nuclear energy as a green alternative or a baseload alternative. You've got Japan speeding up their restarts, which has been pedestrian, very slow, just very slow, but now that's picking up pace. You've got Germany not closing down their reactors now because of what's happening geopolitically. So, that security of supply of cheap, clean energy is really coming to the forefront again through all of these different scenarios that are happening right now. And this is a step change we've been waiting for, and I think it's here, and I think it's coming, and I think we're at the very early stage. So if you want to be in this space, in the nuclear space, get in now. This is the time, because it's been largely ignored. It's coming, and I think companies like CanAlaska are well positioned to take advantage of that through discoveries and that change in sentiment, and I believe we're here.
Yes, and a lot of support. I mean, that Sprott Uranium Trust has helped a lot, and there's a lot more people are paying. Energy is usually kind of ignored by the generalist investor. They don't pay attention. They'll think oil and gas. But I think people, if they kind of put 2 and 2 together, they see where the politicians are talking, where the big investment banks and ESG and this whole shift. This is an opportune time, and it's also an opportune time. I always ask people if there's urgency, because I think in the next 2 weeks, are you sending 2 rigs? Is it 2 rigs going to MacArthur?
We are sending, actually, it's next week.
Okay.
News will be coming out this week, but we are advancing our West MacArthur project with our partner Cameco starting next week. The team's going out, 2 rigs that's out there. We got a $5 million plan for this year, and that's doubled year over year. And the reason it's doubled is because of the results we had last year. We discovered more high-grade mineralization at our 42 zone discovery, just 12 kilometers from MacArthur River, the world's largest highest grade deposit. We can drive there year round. Our partners, Cameco, they own MacArthur, they own the Key Lake Mill. That's the strategic opportunity for our shareholders to be exploring at West MacArthur. We continue to make discovery there. And we've opened up new exploration space with our program last year, in that we're looking for those pearls on a string. And we think we're onto another pearl. 42 zone's one, but we think we're onto another and another. So we're really creating that space of opportunity for discovery for our shareholders, and our exploration is responding to our spend and our investment of our shareholders' money. And that's the key. We think we're onto a really good trend. We've got to remember, we're only 2 kilometers away from the Fox Lake deposit. That's Cameco's. It's 70 million pounds at 8% average grade. We're not talking 0.5%.
Yeah.
8% range. And we've got several holes already at 42 zone that are in that grade range, 8%. That's where we are. That's what we think we're onto. We think we're onto the pearls on a string. MacArthur River is 6 or 7 pearls over 2.5 kilometers length. That's 650 million pounds of uranium.
Yes.
That's what we're looking for. That's what we're focused on. That's why Cameco's involved in our project, is because they saw what was happening back in the around 2015. Actually, I was with Cameco at the time. I was with them for almost 25 years. I did the deal with CanAlaska to bring Cameco into that project.
Oh, no, excellent.
Now I'm on the CanAlaska side of the fence, in large part because of what I see happening at West MacArthur.
Well, that also speaks volumes. That's pretty wild. That's excellent. I did not know that part.
Yeah, that's new. There you go.
That's great. That's great. Okay, well, any last words on the uranium before we jump into the nickel?
No, just pay attention to CanAlaska's portfolio. It's responding to our exploration, which I think is a bit unique amongst our peers. So stay tuned. We've got a big program coming for the next 2.5 months at West MacArthur. Expect a lot of news flow. We've got a great new project down 10 kilometers away from that Key Lake Mill that's owned by Cameco. It takes MacArthur's ore. We've got an incredible new project down there that we're going to advance, and stay tuned for more deals. We've done some deals. We're advancing those through, bringing in up to 15 million Australian over the next several years out of the ASX. Stay tuned for that getting going in the fall. And and a lot of news flow coming from us and our partners. So stay tuned. It's going to be fun in the uranium space.
And people like to see there's lots of news coming. And then, just to kind of touch on before we wrap it up, high world-class sulfide deposit here, Manitoba, 5th largest nickel belt on the planet. Maybe you can kind of wrap us up then with the nickel component that you guys have.
Yeah, we've got an incredible portfolio of nickel assets, second only to Vale and the Thompson Nickel Belt. It's the 5th largest sulfide nickel belt on the planet, sitting in the neighboring province of Manitoba. We've developed an incredible portfolio there. I think it's north of 200,000 hectares already, and we're trying to do deals and bring partners in to help move those forward. but it's an underexplored primary sulfide nickel belt that just has not seen a recent round of activity and new technology applied to it. It's ripe for the picking. We recognized it in the down uranium market as that endpoint for clean energy delivery to the end user.
Yes.
And we picked up all this ground when no one was paying attention. Now we're looking to monetize it for our shareholders through deals or other things, and trying to find a way to bring value back to us. So stay tuned. We've got a lot going on there. We've got a new partnership with Metal Energy, a new company that's planning on drilling 10,000 meters. We just announced that today. 10,000 meters of drilling over the next several months down around Woboden. Again, a past-producing sulfide nickel mine that averaged almost 2.5% nickel at that time at the southwest end of the belt.
Yeah.
So they're drilling high-grade nickel mineralization down there, trying to move that forward, and we're happy to have them as a partner, and they're doing great work down there for us. So we've got an incredible portfolio, and stay tuned in the nickel space, because we're literally a major player in one of the best nickel districts on the planet.
Well, I'm glad we could end on this note, because it's a smooth transition, because your neighbor is our next guest who's going to be on as well. So if you follow up and continue listening to us, we're going to be talking to our next guest, who's literally neighbors in the next door in the nickel space. And we'll get to find out more details, because it's going to also touch on your projects as well about the nickel space. And we really appreciate it. And I love this. I like to, it's not vertically integrated, but it is to some degree. It's that full chain of suite to get us to what we need to see. And that's, people often forget, even when they're excited about the new energy kind of discussion, is you still have to get power from one to the other. They think it's just wind or solar, and then the problem's solved. There's a lot more to it. There's the generation of it. There's the grid system. There's all these components which have to come together. And that's a lot of infrastructure, and it's a lot of material. It's a lot of mining, and it's a lot of resources. And if we can position ourselves as a country to recognize that and be excited about it, and to have it in our backyard, so we regulate it properly, we do it responsibly, then we are sitting in the driver's seat as far as Canada goes for the future.
Absolutely, Andrew. And what better place to look than Canada, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, both with long histories of uranium, copper, and nickel production. And it's great geology, it's great jurisdictions, and here we are. We're entering that next step change in clean energy production, and CanAlaska's front to back end in that. And it's an exciting time in front of us.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Cory. I really appreciate it, and we'll be watching and looking for any results that come out in the next short term. And congratulations so far on those discoveries from 2021, and we look forward to all the news coming out in the near future.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's been a real pleasure telling the story. So, I hope to see everyone at PDAC.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
Today's company presentations are brought to you by Red Cloud Financial Services and the team at Red Cloud Vancouver. Red Cloud Financial Services is your preeminent source for mining industry opportunities. The team provides a unique tailored marketing program dedicated to reaching the right people from its mining-focused global network, giving clients access to industry-leading events and conferences, retail and institutional marketing, plus an in-house growth-driven digital agency. Red Cloud Financial Services has access to some of the mining industry's most notable companies and CEOs. Tune in every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern, 1:15 p.m. Pacific for weekly corporate presentations. For more information, visit redcloudfs.com.
And we're back, and this is a very smooth transition, because we get to speak with Danniel Oosterman, who's a PGO and CEO over at FLYN Nickel. And this is a newer company that's come to market in this emerging nickel space for especially when people are focused so much on batteries and this demand to meet the EV market. I'm glad we got a little bit of the Thompson Belt discussion in Manitoba discussion going with our previous guest, but now we can focus solely on what you've got going.
Thank you, Andrew, and I have to thank Cory for teeing that up so nicely for me. But yeah, so we are actually, yes, we are a new company, but our project is not new at all. It's a project that's been explored for over 50 years. It's the Monago Nickel Project in Thompson, Manitoba. I'm sorry, in Manitoba, but in the Thompson Nickel Belt in Manitoba.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is the fifth largest nickel camp historically in the world. It's produced over 5 billion pounds of nickel since 1959, and quite frankly, it's still producing today. It's a strong producer, and that's because the geology there is outstanding. And these type of sulfide nickel deposits that dot for hundreds of kilometers, they just need to be found. And our project is still 225 kilometers southwest of Thompson. So that just gives you the sort of size and scale of the system that created these nickel deposits where we're situated.
So let's take a kind of a step back when we're talking about nickel. We are lucky to talk about the key use for it, and I don't want to miss out on it. I think we were speaking earlier, and I always go back to like the battery in the car and tests like this. For generalists, that's where they go to first. And I think you mentioned it was an 8-to-1 ratio, and people go, "Oh, Tesla, I understand lithium now a little bit," but we're still not there for them to go, "Well, what else is in this car? What else is in this battery?" And I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Well, as you said, it's 8-to-1 ratio. Nickel is the primary component in these battery metals, and the thing is, the nickel sulfide, which is the style of deposit that we have, is the what you would call Class 1 nickel, and this is the nickel, which is Class 1 just means basically 99% pure nickel versus what would be Class 2 nickel. The reason this is important is to understand why these nickel sulfide deposits are so special. Is because it also affects the volatility of nickel, or what people might perceive as the volatility. If you might recall, Andrew, in around early 2000s, 2006, 2007, nickel went up to $23 a pound, and then it just tanked after that because the reason it got up there is because the emerging Chinese industrialization. They needed it for steel. It's used in stainless steel. It's used in steel hardening and so on and so forth. And those prices went up, but the way China circumvented that supply is they went into what would be pig nickel, which they were deriving from laterites and from recycling and so on and so forth. Well, that's all Class 2 nickel. You can't use that nickel for the EV market. So that gives a very solid basis for the Class 1 style nickel deposits. And you see here, on the left-hand side of this image here, you see in the dark blue, that's the supply of Class 2 nickel. The light blue would be the Class 1. And if you're projecting into 2030, you're going to see a massive increase, 300% increase in the demand of Class 1 nickel that the Class 2 nickel cannot supply, at least not readily. There is a process to turn it into Class 1 nickel, but that uses an energy-intensive process, a highly polluting process. And when you're talking about a green energy demand and green supply and demand, supply chains, you don't want at the front end to have a very dirty product that ultimately, sure, you get a cleaned end product, end of market product. You want it clean from start to finish, and that's what why these sulfide nickel deposits are so special.
And I think moving forward, these bigger institutions and funds, and whether it's Goldman Sachs and Vanguard and BlackRock, I mean, they're very firm on this ESG point, is that why would we even look at some technology to help metallurgy whenever we can go straight to a project that has exactly the nickel we want? It's clean. We don't have to do all of this in between steps and that costing more energy and whatnot. It bodes very well. And that distinction between the types of nickel, I think, is so critical, because in the past, people would have thought, okay, it's used in industry and stainless steel. Okay, not very exciting. But this whole battery story and the shift, people are picking up on that. And we're just in that the fledgling, minutia stage of this whole shift.
Well, exactly, Andrew. You pointed it out. It's like one of the things in mining that we like to do. We like to use tried and true technologies. This is a 60-year-old technology or more. It's the smelting and refining process. The process for Monago, for example, that we envisage when we go into production will be essentially identical to what's been used in Thompson for the last 50 years, and the refinements that they put in the last decade to even increase their quality of their concentrate. There's nothing new here. We don't expect any surprises. It's in the box, if you will. And so we have no worries about that. And we can understand, and that's also going to help us in our feasibility study, which we're currently doing, have very predictive pricing and very predictive costs when we go forward.
Yes, and it's this space here too. You guys, you've got the infrastructure, everything's there in place. But on top of that, you're a newer company, so your capital structure is obviously clean. And what's unique also is that because you're a newer company and because of the unique negative chaotic market we have, someone who's interested can get into your story for a ridiculous discount. Right now. It's ridiculous. It really is.
If you compare us to our peers, who have had several years to get their stories out, and they're following that momentum, justly so. I mean, this nickel thing it's real. It's not a puff of smoke. We just started trading on March 4th of this year, so not too long ago. We just became a company in January of this year, but the project, as I said, is older. So one of the challenges that we have had in some of our discussions with not only just shareholders or potential shareholders on the markets, but potential EOMs as well who may want to take that nickel is, where were you guys a year ago? And we weren't around. We were nested inside a subsidiary of a company, and we spent the last year trying to spin out this entity and this project into who we were. So that's where all of our energy went into, and building a team around that. And so this is a story that I think has flown under the radar for a lot of people, but it's a significant story. We're talking about 1 billion pounds of nickel in our project. That is looking at, and that 1 billion pounds of nickel is essentially 1/5 of all that has been produced in Thompson in all the years. This project will be the largest project to go into northern Manitoba since Inco entered Manitoba in the 1950s, if it goes forward. So it is a significant nickel project. Not only that, because it is a project that was actually brought to a feasibility study in 2010. It was permitted for a 10,000 ton per day operation in 2010. Those licenses are still intact. We just need to have them transferred. There's some notices of alteration that we have to do to the mine design to have a more environmentally responsible mine design, and that is in response to the First Nations concerns in the area. So we're addressing those. And once we have those in, we can get those licenses transferred. We expect by the end of this year, we'll have a fully permitted mine for a 10,000 ton per day nickel operation. And when you talk about other nickel projects out there, that puts us far and above, or way ahead, I should say, in terms of our timelines.
And I mean, you have an MOU with the Cree Nation as well. That was kind of a couple of days after listing. So discussions have been going on for quite some time, but it's farther ahead than just, hey, we're starting to talk. Like
100%. I mean, as I said, we formed the company in January. By the end of February, we had an MOU with the First Nations, Norway House Cree Nation, upon whose traditional lands this is on. But we're also engaged in the other First Nations in the area. We actually see them as a potential partnership to find mine workers and so on and so forth. We're looking at over 400 people, 400 bodies will need to fill the jobs in this mine, and we see them as a source of these jobs, and we think that'll help the economic development for northern Manitoba as well.
Yeah, it'll be a huge lift to Manitoba, and this I think that the goal still on the timeline is still to have fully permitted by the end of 2022.
Yes, we're still on timeline for that. We expect to be submitting that notice of alteration that was to address those concerns on the mine design by the end of this month. It might actually even be as early as this week. And once we submit that through, we have to just go through the channels in the government to get that Environmental Act license issued, as long as it satisfies the requirements that the NOA is suited for. And we think that timeline is humane. There's nothing there that we expect to stop us. Feasibility study is already ongoing. We've announced at the end of November is when we should have that complete. So we'll have not only the feasibility study in hand, we'll have the permits, and that'll really begin the conversation for us for actual project financing.
And this actually kind of leads into this. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I've referred to a deal with a lithium company and Ford, and they went into an MOU about a month ago. Do you see this moving forward, this type of relationship? We've seen it with Tesla as well, where companies are going to look to alternative funding, essentially. Like, it won't be necessarily, I'm going to go to the family office, I'm going to go to the fund or the institution. The institution will now become the end user saying, we don't want to go to the open market, we'll be your partner. Do you see
100%.
that being? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. We actually have already talked to a number of players out there who have expressed interest. I can tell you there is a gap there, which is the fact that, if you're talking to an automaker, for example, they don't really not necessarily understand the guts of a mine and what comes out the door. So you're talking about a concentrate product at the gate. And so there has to be somewhere in that supply chain that the links that need to be filled to get that concentrate product from the mine site into a refined nickel product. That's going to involve a smelter deal, that whether it's going to be talking to Trafigura, whether it's going to be talking to Vale, whether it's going to be talking to Glencore, whoever it might be. So those things, it's an education process for everybody involved. But we saw Tesla with the project in Minnesota do this. They buying the concentrate at the gate, and they just announced a deal with Vale. So presumably those two things are dovetailing for that. So that is probably the kind of thing you're going to see on a regular basis with a lot of nickel projects out there.
And it's actually good timing, because I think I remember seeing a graph where it shows some like nickel supply demand, and that gap really becomes an issue like as a 2025.
Yes.
Kind of onward, but really starts at craters. So for you, timing wise, you get your permitting, you start moving forward. I mean, it's pretty good timing for even a company. On top of, once you see a Ford, a Tesla company start to do these types of deals, and people start to see that that's the new model. Oh, it works. The floodgates open. Then everyone else goes, oh, go. Toyota has to go. Oh, we got to find one. GM needs to find one. It starts feeding itself almost.
Exactly. Almost every projection for the peak of the EV markets is starting at around 26, 27, and going into 2035, where a lot of governments are basically making this policy where all the vehicles have to be electric. We will be right in the sweet spot of that if we go into production at that time, and we can go into production at that time. If we get everything lined up, including project financing, it's 3.5 years pre-production. 3.5 years will put us into 2026, 2027 exactly. So we would be able to supply any EOM that required nickel. And this is the other thing too we talk about. So what would make this project sweet? Well, Manitoba is within Canada, which Canada already has low emissions per in terms of energy intensity for production of electricity. Manitoba is the lowest in Canada. It's 0.4 tons CO2 per kilowatt per gigawatt hour. That is the lowest. We have a 236 hydro line running right through our property that we would drop a line into to help produce power to this mine. So we would be one of our goal is to be the lowest CO2 producing mine in the world. We are very confident that we'll be top 5. And that is going to make us, in terms of that, we talked about that supply chain and not having that dirty supply chain. That's going to make us, not only in terms of timing, but in terms of that ESG goal. It'll put us right in the middle of the charts. We think that'll absolutely be something that'll be attractive to any of the automotive users going forward.
There's no doubt. I know there's people on both sides of that discussion and they get, it gets heated. It's no doubt that that's a huge factor moving forward for any company who wants to do things. And listen, if there's from the top level saying we want to see a certain standard, and you guys, it makes your project far more attractive. And if a car company can get that bonus, not only is it a bonus with the money, the institutions and the funds, it's a bonus on a social scale as well.
Agreed. And we talked quickly about First Nations. We're very sensitive to being environmental stewardship, and what better way to do that than to have a hopefully a net zero producing CO2 mine. I think that would be also, and having their involvement, of course, but that this is something that we think is going to really put us on the map. And as you pointed, we're a new company, and the fact that our current valuation really, we feel it puts us, we're a deal right now. I mean, it's just, this is just a start. I mean, having conversations like this and getting this news out there, and as we push this forward, PDAC next week, we're going to be quite busy trying to get people to understand what this project and why it's so special. And that is our goal for going into 2023, that we just generate momentum until we get to that conversation about project financing.
Yes. And like I said, this is a very impressive project, to say the least. And I'm so glad that we could get people informed about how critical nickel is, because they're starting to come along with some of the other bigger name stuff. But until they start to realize, well, what all is made in this, and we'll get there. It might take some more time. We'll get there. Yeah. But for someone who's watching now and who's evaluating their portfolio with their advisor and looking and going, oof, you know, my FANG portfolio, my U.S. equities is pulled back 65%, or my Bitcoin is down a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from those at all. It's just, maybe it's time, if you really are, you know, motivated by, you know, investing ethically, socially, and looking to make a big change in the environment and looking for a green movement, these types of plays are where Canadians especially should be looking, because we're a resource country. We have it in our backyard, and we could be leaders in this. And this is certainly a project that's big enough to excite people, and also big enough that would excite end user, like cars and whatnot. So very interesting. And I'm very glad to have had you on to tell us about the project.
I appreciate the opportunity, Andrew. And if I may, just one last point, you know, one thing to have the project, but we also have the team to put it together. Yes. Proven nickel professionals. I half my year exploring for nickel. I started in Thompson, but our COO has operated mines in Thompson for over 30 years before joining us. He still lives in Thompson today, actually, and he refined a lot of these projects, brought them up online. This is nothing new to him, and we're gonna make this a go.
And that is critical. And thanks for bringing that up, because having the management and having that ability to not pivot, but I mean, you can develop this mine, you can actually mine this mine if you want to, or whatever works best for shareholders. And that is unique, because sometimes if a company is simply, we're a project generator, we're an exploration company, we're this, we're that, we just look to pass it along. This, you guys have a lot of plays that you could make. And it's
absolutely,
we're at day one, basically. We're early days with you. And right. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing any news that comes out, and as this develops and moves along its milestones.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Take care, Danniel.
Bye.